Hello, I'm Stu Lewis, General Manager of Cedar Ridge Plantation. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video and having the interest in being involved in a truly remarkable program. Our quality deer management program consists of 4 cornerstones: herd management, habitat management, hunter management, and herd monitoring. But let's get to the bottom line. What is quality deer management really? Quality deer management is the approach under which young bucks are protected from harvest, combined with an adequate harvest of female deer to produce healthy deer herds in balance with existing habitat conditions. The primary purpose of this short video concerns herd management and hunter management. The short version is we're going to focus on how to better age bucks on the hoof. Many of you have been doing this for years, but sometimes getting a visual on something may remind you of things you have forgotten. Under the best circumstances, aging white-tailed deer on the hoof is a calculated guess. Even when all proper methods have been utilized and all information analyzed, you can still make mistakes. However, by educating ourselves, constantly being vigilant, and practicing aggressive trigger restraint, we can improve our odds a great deal. Here at Cedar Ridge Plantation, we have the luxury of having a great number of mature bucks in our inventory. If you don't have time to age him properly, let him walk. There will be another one. If you're having a tough time telling the difference between a 3.5 and 4.5-year-old buck, let him walk and wait for a 5.5-year-old buck, or one that is more obviously that 4.5-year-old or older class buck we're looking for. You see, our rules don't say we have to harvest a 4.5-year-old buck. It says 4.5 years or older. We have plenty of bucks that will fall into that older category. Bottom line is, after using all the tools you have to age a buck, and if you still are not sure he's 4.5 years or older, let him go so he can grow. The only thing you may have possibly lost was a nice buck to hang on the wall, some bragging rights, and for males a possible spike in your testosterone. By letting him walk and taking his picture, you still have the bragging rights. You can still frame it and hang it on the wall. The testosterone spike may not have been as high, but neither was the mounting fee or the disappointment of shooting an underage buck. Be sure of your shot. Once you put that bow or gun in your hand, you become a deer manager. Take that job seriously. The success of our deer herd and of our club depends on it. Now let's get started and see what we can learn about aging bucks. Identifying does and fawns. An adequate doe harvest is essential to maintaining population densities within available food supplies and balancing sex ratios. Unfortunately, well-intentioned hunters often mistake buck fawns for does. Harvesting the nubbin, 6-month-old buck fawns will reduce future antlered buck numbers, so it should be kept to a minimum. Fortunately, there are several ways to differentiate between does and fawns. Early season bow hunters regularly see spotted fawns. However, the fawn spotted coat is usually shed and replaced with a brownish or grayish coat by mid-autumn. The fawn's forehead and nose, or its snout, are shorter than the adult does. Fawn behavior differs from the adult doe's behavior. Fawns are more playful, naive, inquisitive, and in the buck fawn's case, more aggressive. A buck fawn may be the first antlerless deer seen because he is less wary and more inquisitive. The nubbin buck has developing antler bases or pedicles that are difficult to see early in the season, but are easier to detect later, particularly from the side. Use these following tips to harvest an older doe and to avoid harvesting a buck fawn. Do not harvest an antlerless deer that appears alone. Adult does rarely travel alone. Does and fawns normally travel together in social groups, although it is often the buck fawn that enters an opening first. Wait until several deer are together and then look for obvious size difference. Harvest one of the larger antlerless deer. Later in the hunting season, it is not uncommon for orphan twin fawns to feed in food plots. Probability dictates one will be a buck and one a doe. In this situation, it is easy to mistake the buck fawn for an adult doe, since it is normally larger than the doe fawn. The doe's head normally is more rounded on top, between the ears, because the buck's head is flattened by the presence of pedicles. Close inspection with binoculars, looking for the pedicles or antler bases, helps avoid harvesting the nubbin buck. Watch the behavior of deer. Fawns are playful, curious, and not as cautious as adult does. Examine the head of the deer. Check for pedicles on buck fawns, particularly from the side view. Do not harvest antlerless deer with short snouts. Look for wear and tear, signs that typify mature does. For example, ears that appear too short for the head, a swayed back, and a sagging belly. The snout of an adult doe is relatively larger than a fawn's. An adult doe's body is rectangular shaped, while the fawn's body is square shaped. Nubbin bucks, or button bucks, that's where our program really begins. Making mistakes is always possible, but being prepared, being educated, helps make that much less of a risk. Whitetails are like people in the sense that their overall body appearance changes with age. The general appearance becomes more mature as the buck ages from year to year. By judging the general overall appearance and then focusing on specific body parts, it is possible to place bucks into one of several age classes. The 1.5-year-old buck, the yearling. It is often said that a yearling buck resembles a doe with antlers, which makes it relatively easy to pick out. The 1.5-year-old buck will not have developed the swollen neck and muscular characteristics of older bucks. These bucks tend to have thin hindquarters and long, thin legs. Think of a teenage boy not yet reaching full height and not nearly filled in. Almost all yearlings have an antler spread of less than 13 inches. These teenagers have not learned to be as secretive as their older associates, so they often enter food plots earlier than older bucks and tend to be in the vicinity of doe family groups. The average size of a buck's antlers doubles between 1.5 and 2.5 years of age. The 2.5-year-old buck. The 2.5-year-old group is more difficult than yearlings to judge. A majority of this group still have antler spreads inside the ears, but some individuals may produce a good set of antlers. During rut, this age class produces a limited amount of neck swelling due to muscle development, and the waist or area just in front of the back legs is relatively thin. The hindquarters are much more filled in than the yearlings, but their legs appear to be long and lanky. This age class has lots of growing to do before reaching full maturity. Their racks are only about 60% of the size they will be at 5.5 to 6.5 years of age. The 2.5-year-old buck will remind you of about a 20-year-old man. He is starting to muscle up a little bit, but he still hasn't started filling out much and doesn't even come close to looking like a tough guy. All right, here's where you really want to start paying attention. First off, everyone needs to understand the bucks in these pictures are being aged by the way they look in that particular picture. Therefore, it is possible to see the same buck in two different age groups because of the way he looks in that particular picture. This video is not a shoot, don't shoot video. Instead, it is a visual reference as to what a buck looks like in that age category. You have to be the one to age that buck in the field before you pull the trigger. Hopefully, the visual images in this video will help you accomplish that. The 3.5-year-old buck. The ability to distinguish the 3.5-year-old age group is important to a management program emphasizing harvest of matured bucks with maximum antler development. During the rut, the buck's neck is thickly muscled, yet there is still a distinct junction between the neck and shoulders. Some biologists compare its look to that of a well-conditioned racehorse. The chest region may begin to appear deeper than the hindquarter area. Inside spread of the antlers typically is at or outside the ears. These bucks can develop impressive antlers, especially on well-managed properties in productive habitats. They are easily mistaken for mature deer. In reality, they have reached only about 75% of maximum antler development. It is critical that we learn to distinguish these deer from our 4.5-year-old and older mature bucks. Let's take a second and examine this 3.5-year-old buck. The 3.5-year-old buck is going to remind you of a 35-year-old man. Some may be starting to fill out more than others, but they all are going to be pretty impressive looking by now. Now let's take a look at the chest region. Notice how it's beginning to look deeper than the hindquarter area? Also, notice their neck is still distinct, about 4 or 5 inches above the brisket. All right now, let's try something a little bit different. I'm going to put up 12 bucks on the screen one at a time. I want you to age each of those bucks. If you think that that buck is a shooter, in other words, you think he's 4.5 years or older, say yes. If you think that that buck is not a shooter, in other words, 3.5 years or younger, say no. If you're not sure whether that buck is a shooter or not, say maybe. It's as simple as that. All I want you to do, again, is we have 12 bucks going to come up on the screen. Yes for a shooter, no for a buck that's too young to shoot, and maybe if you're not sure. All right, you might want to get a pen and pencil out, take a little short break, and then let's have some fun. Hit pause now if you need to get a pen or pencil, or if you want to take a short break. Okay, let's get started. I put this buck as a no. If you look at the line from the ground to the bottom of the chest, and then the line from the bottom of the chest to the top of the back, you'll notice the line from the ground to the bottom of the chest is significantly longer than from the bottom of the chest to the top of the back. Also, this buck has a thin neck. The neck does not blend into the shoulders and is still very distinct. Okay, buck number 2. I put this buck down as a maybe. If you look at his chest, his waist, and his hindquarters, you'll notice his chest is a little deeper than his waist and his hindquarters. Also, if you look at his neck, you'll notice it's not quite blending the way I'd like to see it blend into the shoulders. I think this deer is a real strong 3.5-year-old. However, there is a possibility he's 4.5. I'd have to take a good look at him in the field. And since I can't see how long his legs are in this photograph, I'm going to put him down as a maybe, and I'm going to look him over real good out in the field. Buck number 3. I put this buck down as a yes. If you look at the difference from the ground to the chest and from the chest to the top of the back, this time you'll notice the distance is shorter from the ground to the chest than it is from the chest to the top of the back. And if this deer was standing on even ground, or if the photo was taken broadside of this deer, you would notice that his hindquarters and his waist is as deep as his chest. One other thing I want to point out is look at this deer's neck, how it blends into his shoulder. It's a one-piece neck. You can't tell where the neck ends and the shoulder begins. This buck is definitely a shooter. I'd be real proud of him. Buck number 4. I put him down as a no. It's obvious if you look from the ground to the chest and from the chest to the top of the back, the distance from the ground to the chest is much larger than the distance from the chest to the top of the back. He has long legs. Also, if you look at the neck on this deer, you'll notice how it's very distinct. There's no blending into the shoulders. Now, although this deer has a very nice rack, he appears as if he is immature, and we're going to let him pass. Buck number 5. For the same reasons as buck number 4, I put this buck down as a no. His neck is very distinct, and he has long legs. I believe this deer has a ways to go before he's ready to harvest. Buck number 6. Okay, I realize this is a given. Everybody out there got this one right, but let's go through it anyway. From the ground to the chest, obviously is much shorter than from the chest to the top of the back. If this buck was standing perfectly broadside, you would also notice that his hindquarters and his waist were down as low as his chest. All of his legs will look short. Also, if you look at this buck's neck, you'll notice the neck blends perfectly into the shoulder. You can't tell where the neck ends and the shoulder begins. This buck is a magnificent buck. Harvest him if you have the opportunity. Buck number 7. Well, this deer certainly caught my attention, and he would certainly be worth a second look out in the field. However, after close examination, I look at his chest, and I notice that his waist and his hindquarters don't seem to come down as far as his chest. I also look at his neck. It appears that his neck is a little thin, and it's really a little distinct how it goes into his shoulders. I can't see how long his legs are, so that leaves me to question a little bit whether this buck is mature or not mature. However, he also has a racehorse look. At first glance, looking at this picture only, I would say this buck is a strong 3.5-year-old. However, he is certainly worth a second look out in the field. Buck number 8. Now here's another good-looking buck. You want to be careful you don't look at his antlers too long. If you do look at the distance from the ground to the chest, it appears to be greater than the distance between the chest and the top of the back. If you look at this buck's neck, it appears that it is somewhat distinct. However, it does blend in fairly well with his shoulder. This is a real good-looking buck. He deserves a second look out in the field. If it's only this photograph I have to judge this buck by, I'm guessing he's another strong 3.5-year-old and probably should walk for another year or so. Buck number 9. You better be careful here. Better get your eyes off those antlers. This is one of the hardest photographs you'll have to judge today, and the safest bet you can do is say maybe. This buck is a good-looking buck. It's real hard to tell how old he is by looking at this particular photograph. It appears like his neck may be a little thin. However, his chest does look deep, and you can't really tell anything about his legs. I'm going to put this deer down as a maybe and hope I get to see him in the field and get a better look at him then. Buck number 10. Well, I put buck number 10 down as a maybe. I do think that this buck is a 4.5-year-old buck, but I'd have to field check him to be sure. It appears to me that the distance from the ground to the chest is about the same as the distance between the chest and the top of the back. You can't really tell because of the way he's standing on exactly what the hindquarters and the waistline are doing, but it looks to me like they may be up just a little bit more than I'd like to see them. His neck appears to blend in fairly well, so this is one of those tough to call deer, but I would say he is probably a 4.5-year-old, but I wouldn't pull the trigger unless I got a real good look at him in the field to make sure. Buck number 11. I said yes on this buck. I think this buck looks mature to me in just about every way he could. He has short legs, You can't really tell by the angle he's standing on, but if he was broadside, you would see that his rump and his waist is down as far as his chest. His neck blends perfectly into his shoulders. He has that one-piece neck. Although his antlers aren't that impressive, this is definitely a mature deer. He's also carrying some other equipment that could be noted at the proper time and the proper place. Buck number 12. I put him down as a knot. To me, this deer does not appear to be a mature buck in this photo. His back is too straight, his belly is too tight, his legs look too long, and his neck looks too thin. There is no doubt he will grow up to be a very nice buck someday. Let's take a second and figure out what we just did. You will notice in this video we went from talking about how to identify a 3.5-year-old buck to aging deer. We didn't get into the particulars of what a 4.5-year-old buck looks like or what a 5.5-year-old buck looks like. What we did was put our bucks in two groups: mature, 4.5 years and older, and not mature, 3.5 years and younger. The reason we did it this way is so we could take the pressure off of people to know exactly what a 4.5-year-old buck looks like. There is absolutely nothing in our rules that says you have to harvest a 4.5-year-old buck. It clearly states 4.5 years or older, or in other words, a mature buck. Take the pressure off of yourself and focus on harvesting a mature buck. If you can't tell the buck is mature, then don't harvest him. Some people may acquire the skill level to tell the difference between a 4.5 and a 3.5-year-old buck. Others may have to harvest 5.5-year-olds until they feel comfortable aging 4.5-year-old bucks. Look for mature bucks. Look for bucks older than 3.5 years of age. If you're not confident that a buck is mature, then don't pull the trigger. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Remember, give yourself a wide enough margin for error. Once you pull that trigger, there's no turning back. Keep on learning about the white-tailed deer. The more you learn, the more you will enjoy your hunting experience. Thanks for being a part of Cedar Ridge Plantation. Be safe and have a great hunting season.